But we were just at a homeschool conference recently, and we were talking about the subject of why and how to get started. And I realized that there's a lot of families that missed the whole COVID timeframe. Their kids were young enough, they didn't have to worry about school then. But now, 4 years later, they're facing that schooling decision, and they're looking for the reasons. Oh boy, should I homeschool? I've heard some horror stories. I've heard that there's a lot of folks doing that these days, but I'm scared. Welcome to the show called Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. This is the show where we talk about everything homeschooling, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. We want to affirm and encourage you in the decision to homeschool, challenge and inspire you to take it to new heights, and celebrate everything you get to experience along the way in this adventure of a lifetime. We are your hosts, Davis and Rachael Carman, and we want to remind you, our listening audience, that you can now watch us on YouTube, or you can continue listening on your favorite podcast app. Today's show is titled Homeschool Bootcamp version 2.0. Okay, Rachael, let's talk homeschool. So several years back, in 2020, there was this thing called a worldwide pandemic, and all kinds of people were clamoring on what to do come the fall of 2020 in terms of educating their kids. And because of the upheaval, there were some organizations that put together a public school boot camp.
Right.
And the idea there was how to get voted onto a school board.
Right.
And then once voted on, how to make changes to stop the crazy. Mm-hmm. There was not a homeschool boot camp. So we did a homeschool boot camp at Apologia because that's what we care about. So in this homeschool boot camp version 1.0, we did several videos and made it free for folks to kind of have a quick FAQ of how to get started, what they need to think about, and so forth.
Right.
The feedback was so positive, the need was so great that we got some wonderful suggestions on some topics to include, and we decided to do a version 2.0 and make it bigger and better and just answer some of the questions that we got back from that feedback. So this year, 2024, we've already made it available. We have Homeschool Bootcamp version 2.0. If you go to apologia.com/bootcamp, you can sign up. It's all free, and you can watch these videos. So in this series, we have 12 videos. It has me and you and Lad and April Lesh. We're in various combinations in these videos to answer 12 different questions or themes or topics.
Right.
So that's what we're going to do right here. We're going to give you a quick overview of what is in Homeschool Bootcamp so that you can go to that website and check it out for yourself if you haven't already.
It'd be a great thing, too, to hand off to friends and family. Perhaps you've already started this journey, or maybe you're already an advocate, but you know that there's some other people who could really benefit. You can pass this podcast along to them so that they can check it out for themselves. If perhaps you have family members that are a little apprehensive about your decision to homeschool, it'd be a great thing because it's another voice, right, to talk about why homeschool. So you could pass it off to them, too. There's a variety of different ways that you can use this.
So one of the topics, and the great thing about this series is you can watch any of the videos you want in any order. You don't have to watch them all. So you can pick and choose to get right to the meat of what you have questions about.
Right.
So one of the ones that I was in with Lad was the history of homeschooling,
Right.
where we obviously talked a little bit about what's happened in the last 50 or 60 years in this modern day movement, because I do consider homeschooling one of the greatest social, cultural, spiritual, and certainly academic movements of the last 50 years. I mean, if you are unaware of what's been happening, you're missing out on something, quite frankly, huge that's been going on in not just American culture, but worldwide culture.
Right.
And then COVID played a role in getting more people to actually consider and get started. So we look at some stats, we look at some numbers, and we look at some of the history behind homeschooling. So that's one of the videos in the series. Then we could do some practical things. So I know you and April talked about planning and goal setting. So what did you talk about in that session?
So yeah, I'm a 26-year-old homeschool veteran. For those of you who don't know, maybe you're somebody suggested you listen or watch this. So we homeschooled our 7 kids for 27 years, and they've all graduated now and been launched. All of them went to college, and so that's the point of reference I'm coming from. April Lesh is actually the homeschool mother of 9, and she's really still in it. Her oldest is 14. Her youngest is 2, I think. And so she and I exchanged different strategies, different ideas, different approaches to actually planning a homeschool week, a homeschool year. How did we both do that? And we both did it kind of differently, but the whole point is homeschooling is very unique to your family. Unique to each one of your children. It's not going to look the same, but we just wanted to give you some ideas of what worked for us, and hopefully maybe you can use one of the 2 things that worked for us. Maybe you don't use either one, but you see the opportunity to how you can plan.
And we're going through these in no particular order necessarily. We're going to try and do them in an order that makes a little bit of sense. But we also talked about in one of the videos, why homeschool? Why even consider doing this? Yeah. And we talked about sometimes the decision is made out of fear. Sometimes you're forced to do so. And then you want to get to the place where you're homeschooling out of faith.
Right.
It really is a walk of faith. That's what we say in our blogs, in our podcast, that we are walking by faith and enjoying the homeschooling adventure of a lifetime, because it really has grown our faith in so many ways. Mm-hmm. So whether you started by force or fear, we want to encourage you to get to the place where you're eventually doing it out of faith.
And it's really powerful if you're new to homeschooling or if you have other friends that do. It's really a powerful thing to share your stories about how you began this journey and how faithful God is being in the meantime.
Right. So that's the why to homeschool. But then if you're on the fence, or maybe you've already started, there's this issue that you have to break free of, and that is the public school mindset.
Yeah.
So we had a session just on that, how to break free from the public school mindset. And that's assuming either you were public schooled or maybe you're pulling your kids out of public school, and you need to help your kids break free of that.
Yeah.
And we do find that that's a significant issue for a lot of families. Even when we started, we had to break free of that paradigm that was so ingrained in how this would look, or what a day would look like, or how to do it. And so there's some life experiences that we've learned that we share in those videos. Mm-hmm. Okay, Rachel, but what does a day look like? So again, you and April talked about a day in the life of a homeschool.
Yeah, and again, I just can't reiterate it enough. Homeschooling is unique for each family. But April and I did sit down and just have a conversation of what a day looks like. They actually live on a 35-acre farm with their 9 children. And so one of their objectives is for their kids to have that experience with the land and animals and home education and siblings. That is one of the contexts that they really wanted to give to their children. We didn't do a farm context. We just did it here at our house, and we had our own objectives. So you can imagine if April's got a couple of her kids going out to feed chickens and milk a cow in the morning, I didn't have that. But it just, again, gives you 2 different ends of the spectrum of how you can plan a homeschool day. And what does a day look like? How do you begin? How do you start? How do you actually do a lesson? How do you, if you have a rest time, what do meal times look like? We talked about all of that.
Right. Then there's always the question, how do I choose the curriculum?
Sure.
Where do I get it? What are all the different kinds of curriculum that are available? And those are good questions and important ones. And academics is clearly part of home education. There's so much more, I will let you know that. But on the academics, there's some things to consider. And I know we talk about things you need to know before you go through the difficult task, the important task of picking curriculum, knowing you're probably going to make some mistakes at the beginning, and but then you'll probably figure things out as you get to know your kids, and as you get more experienced in your own personal homeschool journey.
Exactly.
So choosing curriculum is an important topic, and we cover that. But then we go to the high school side of things, which is a whole different animal in terms of choosing curriculum and putting a plan together. So you and I talked about that because we have graduated all 7 of our kids through high school. But there's some specific and practical tips that we give in that to help guide you, to help give you ways to think about it, plan for it, and have some success along the way. So we've learned a lot in homeschooling. So we also shared some tips from the trenches. What do you remember about that session?
I just remember that there was more to share than we had time to share it, right? One of our objectives in this podcast and in our ministry is we really want to be able to roll it forward. God was so faithful. I don't want you to mistake us as 2 people who out of the blocks wanted to home educate our kids. You can look that podcast up. We did not have a vision for this when we were first married or when we had our first son. This was an intersection that we found ourselves in. We actually started, I would say, because we felt forced. So that is part of our story. And yet, along the way, God was so amazingly faithful. And we did learn so many things. And frankly, I would like to spare you from some of the huge mistakes that we made. And so that's why we did this session, Tips from the Trenches. What did we learn that we'd like to pass along to you that we really believe you would benefit from? Right.
So we've covered 8 of the 12 this session so far. Right now, we're going to take a quick break because I want to tell you about Apologia's new math curriculum. Homeschooling moms have been raving about Apologia's Exploring Creation with Mathematics, calling it a total game changer. With hands-on math activities and games, short 30-minute lessons, an open and go format, a suggested 4-day work week, your children are going to love Apologia Math. One mom said, "I finally found it. I've been searching for years for the perfect math curriculum, something hands-on with short lessons, has everything in an easy layout, a parent manual. Apologia knocked it out of the park with this one." So many homeschool families have switched to Apologia Math after struggling with other curriculum options and have seen their children become excited about math for the first time. So visit apologia.com/math. Do that today and discover why so many homeschool families are making the switch to Apologia's Exploring Creation with Math. Okay, so we're talking about Homeschool Bootcamp version 2.0. The website is apologia.com/bootcamp. You can register there. It's all free. There's 12 videos. You can watch them in any order at your own pace, completely or partially. But we have all these 12 questions and topics and categories that we cover. We've talked about 8 of them so far. Let's see. We talked about homeschool planning and goal setting, high school, a day in the life of homeschooling, why homeschooling, tips from the trenches, choosing curriculum, breaking free of the public school mindset, a little bit of the history of homeschooling, and now we want to cover the last 4, one of which is that age-old question, what about socialization?
Yeah, so we homeschooled for 26 years, and that was the number one question when we started was there's this idea, and it's so outlandish, that if you home educate, your children don't come out of the darkness into the light, right? They never see the light of day because you're huddled down in some basement shelter, and they don't ever get to see any other humans. Nothing could be further from the truth. Socialization, I think we have the advantage in home education when it comes to socialization because we can better vet what our children are exposed to. And I would argue all day long that that is our responsibility, is to know who our children are interacting with. And so in home education, we get to prioritize the relationships that our children build on. And I believe that children are better equipped and prepared to socialize out in the world, right, and be the influencers that God has called them to be when those relationships are set in the family with mom and dad and siblings. And so I really do believe homeschoolers have the corner on the market of socialization now. The socialization that is happening in the public schools right now is definitively negative. There may be some bright spots out there. I hope that there are. And this is not intended to criticize those people who are in the public school system endeavoring to do a good job and to have an influence and to shine a light. It is just not what is characteristically taking place. And so in home education, there are all kinds of extracurricular activities, anything from co-ops to sports to speech and debate to plays and theater that your children can get involved in, art lessons, karate. Our son did Civil Air Patrol. There is a variety of things that they can get involved in and friends that they can meet. And it's not a problem in homeschooling to have your kids have friendships within that context.
Well, and the beauty of homeschooling is you are in complete charge and control of what extracurricular activities and social settings your kids are in. So there may be some bright spots out there, but you're still not in control, and things could change quickly. Yes. And there's some programs that our kids did for a while, and then something changed. We're in control. We made the switch out of that one, or we do something else because a leader changed, the time changed, the curriculum changed. Who knows what happened that was negative in our view, and we wanted to protect our kids and give them something good, positive socialization. Right. And we always like to say, when it comes to socialization, be socially wise, socialization. Yeah. So we cover that topic in great detail. But the last three that we want to share with you were brand new. They were not in version 1. They're in version 2, partly because of the feedback we got from folks in the first time around. And that is homeschooling if you're a working parent, homeschooling if you're a single parent, and homeschooling if you're a parent with children that has a child or two that have special learning needs. Yeah. So you did all those interviews with 3 different homeschooling moms who are in those situations. Yeah. They were fantastic interviews. They covered a lot of ground with somebody who's actually living those situations. Yeah,
and I made 3 new friends, right? I mean, I was just blown away by the wisdom of these 3 homeschool moms, by their dedication to God, and their commitment to their families, and the faithfulness of God. And each one of these women, they just radiated the joy of the Lord as they talked to me about their circumstances, which are not ideal. And yet, in the midst of their circumstances, God has proven faithful and good as they have committed to home educating their children. So first of all, we talked to Carrie, who is the mother of 3, and through her life circumstances, she is a full-time working mom. Carrie is a second-generation homeschooler, and she really, really wanted to home educate her children, and it just didn't look like it was going to be possible when she found herself as a single mom. And yet, through COVID, she was able to begin home educating her children, and God has provided. I don't want to give too much of the story, any one of these away, but it's really a remarkable interview. Carrie is really doing a great job honoring God, following Him, and God's provision for her family is truly remarkable.
Right. And then you talked to Nikki, who is a single mom, or at least was a single mom for a period of time when she was homeschooling. And that was a moving testimony as well of God's provision.
Yeah.
Like you say, you made a new friend and you got to see how God worked and intervened in her life. And then you also talked to Katie.
Yeah. Katie's story is that of a mother of more than 1 special needs children. And it was just such a delight to talk to Katie. Again, she just radiated the joy of the Lord, and her confidence is in the Lord. And she talked about how it can get messy and intense around their house when they're trying to get everybody's studies done. But again, how God's peace just reigns in their home. So I would invite you, no matter where you are, as a working mother, a single mother, or a mother of special needs, or none of those, these 3 stories of these women are still worth your time to watch, just because of how inspiring they are. And it's good for us to be reminded of just the goodness of God.
That's right. So again, Homeschool Bootcamp version 2.0, you can go there by visiting apologia.com/bootcamp. You register, sign up, it's all free. And again, you can watch them at your own pace, at your own time. Pick and choose whichever of these 12 videos you want to watch.
And make sure you share them with other people, because this is a tool, right? I know that in our journey, People were asking me all the time, I have no idea where I would start or how do you do that? This is the how-to. This is that in a package. And again, it's completely free. The registration is just so that we can stay in touch with you and we can get feedback from you and help you. Our objective at Apologia is to help you succeed. And this is part of that. So make sure that you share it with people who have questions, or maybe you're praying about it or timid to make a decision. This may be just the tool they need to step out in faith.
Right. Well, and I want to add to that, because in 2020 during COVID, a lot of families started homeschooling out of fear or feeling forced, or the curtain being pulled back and they saw what was actually going on, and they said, oh, wow, it's worse than I thought.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of folks that started then. But we were just at a homeschool conference recently, and we were talking about the subject of why and how to get started. And I realized that there's a lot of families that missed the whole COVID timeframe. Their kids were young enough, they didn't have to worry about school then. But now, 4 years later, they're facing that schooling decision, and they're looking for the reasons. Oh boy, should I homeschool? I've heard some horror stories. I've heard that there's a lot of folks doing that these days, but I'm scared.
Yeah.
And they're going through the normal questions that people ask. This boot camp is for them. There are literally hundreds of thousands of families every year considering homeschooling or not. We want them to say yes, because of how it's changed our life, how it can grow their faith, and how God can do so many things in just how the gospel is shared within families and outside of families. So again, share this with your friends, share this with folks that you know who are thinking about homeschooling.
And let us know your thoughts and your feedback. We'd love to know if there's something we missed, because there probably is. If there's another question, we'd love to cover it here on the podcast, or perhaps in Bootcamp 3.0 as we go forward in our quest to try to encourage and support you and help you succeed.
Well, it's time to bring this conversation to a close. It's always a great time of talking. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We hope you'll join us again next time. This is Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries, and we are your hosts, Davis and Rachael Carman. As always, have a great day, and until next time, we are walking by faith and enjoying the homeschooling adventure of a lifetime.